welcome to a special episode of Bitches Love Sports. I am Jazz Monet. I am your host, and this is not my house. So I'm dog sitting, and there was enough space for me to set up to do this live real quick. So I decided to go ahead and get set to do it. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like if you see me sitting like in a weird way, it's because I'm trying to like hide stuff on the desk. This is not my desk. This is not my house. But here I am. This is also not my mic, but hopefully it sounds good. So as usual, let me know in the comments if you can't hear me or if you can't see me. And if you are watching on Twitter, and you want to participate in the conversation, come on over to YouTube so that I can actually see the comments in the chat. Anyway, this is not my usual day or time to go live. It's been a really weird week. So, fun fact about cars, even with all the technology in the world, they can like crap out on you without warning. So, my car has all sorts of bells and whistles that are supposed to make life easier. It has like little flashing lights near each rearview mirror that lets me know if somebody's in my blind spot. It has this voice that tells me things like, hey, you're approaching a toll road, or like, hey, this road has restricted access. Like if I'm approaching a gated community or an apartment complex that has like a gate code or anything. It puts all sorts of things up on the display about the tires and about warnings for like typing while I'm driving because I can do that in the navigation system. But what it doesn't say is like, hey, your rear differential is about to go out, and if you keep driving, you're gonna fuck up your whole shit. And that is precisely what happened to me. So dealing with that situation has made for a very hectic week. So how I normally go live the day after a Cowboys game did not happen because I was trying to figure out how to still survive in Austin without a car. But anyway, it turned out to all work out because some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about has just like really unfolded as the week has gone on, especially this situation. Martin said, Jesus, that's exactly how I felt. Hold on, Martin, since I think it's just me and you in here, I'm gonna like tell you more of this story. So, like, I was literally like an hour away from my house, like an hour driving at normal speed, and like, uh, I started hearing like this clicking sound and but it would stop. Like if I stopped at a stop sign, it would stop. Or if I would like go in reverse, it would stop. And so at one point I got out of my car and I kind of smelled a burning smell. But like when I say my car was driving fine, literally no change. There was no shaking, no vibration, nothing. So I was just like, okay, when I get home, I'm gonna call one of my friends to like come look at this. Cause I don't know a lot about cars, but I have friends who know a lot about cars. Then like all of a sudden the clicking got faster and faster, the car started shaking, and I could still drive but it just felt weird with the car vibrating. And so one of my friends was like, pull over. I'm gonna come check on you. He comes over, takes a picture underneath the car, and he's like, yeah, your rear driver's side axle is broken. Um, I still tried to drive it slowly home, which only felt safe for like a few minutes. Pulled over, took a Uber home because I still had to work. Ended up getting the car towed to a shop, and they were the ones who told me that like my whole differential was fucked, basically. So yeah, that's where I am. I already had to spend hundreds getting it towed, and it's gonna cost thousands to get it fixed. So yay me. But anyway, a lot of the stuff that I would have talked about on Tuesday morning, we have a lot more details on that now, including the situation with Micah Parsons and his comments about the media. In case you've been living under a rock or you somehow stumbled upon my stream, even though you're not a Cowboys fan, um, am I loud enough? I'm like, how close should my face be to the mic? Um, but yeah, just in case you just stumbled upon the stream and you're not like actually a Cowboys fan or you haven't been keeping up with this, basically Micah went on his podcast and he did the podcast like normal, like he usually says a few things about, just the NFL in general. But when it came to the Cowboys, long story short, he had a message for mainstream sports media, which was, hey, I don't like how you've been talking about my quarterback. I don't like how you've been talking about my team. It's unfair. You give other teams way more grace whenever they have an unexpected loss. You have all sorts of reasons, also all sorts of excuses. You take all these factors into account for why they might have lost that game or why they might not have performed well. But when it comes to the Cowboys, it's just like, oh, y'all suck, your quarterback isn't good enough, you're not good enough. And it's a lot of harsh criticism that Micah Parsons and honestly a lot of people in Cowboys Nation feel is unjustified. And so he went in on that. That led members of the media to respond. And then, of course, he responded. And then Stephen A. Smith and everybody who was on First Take with him this morning responded back. So I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes, but I want to make sure and acknowledge the Las Vegas Aces for their repeat and being WNBA champions before I get too deep into the Micah Parsons thing. So this honestly should be a quick stream, but I'm gonna start with that, give them their props, and then we'll dive into the Micah Parsons thing. Because honestly, that's the main reason I'm doing this tonight. Because I'm just like, tomorrow, this probably won't be relevant unless something new happens. It shouldn't be relevant. So I'm like, I'm gonna just speak my piece on this and then play some video games and go to bed. So, I actually had some notes about this game in my notebook. I'm gonna pull up some highlights for y'all, but just know that the things I'm saying are not in alignment with these highlights. Okay, so the Las Vegas Aces, repeat champions, like I said. Why are you doing this? There we go. I promise y'all the TV behind me is not as crooked as it looks. But yeah, so Las Vegas Aces ended up closing out the WNBA championship in 4 games. So there was a lot of speculation about whether or not it would go all 5 just because of the competitiveness of the New York Liberty, and Las Vegas was like, no, I don't think so. Now, if you saw the score, the game was closer than a lot of people expected it to be. A lot of that had to do with the fact that Chelsea Gray and Kia Stokes were out. So, in case you don't know who those people are, because I never know who's going to come across these streams, Chelsea Gray and Kia Stokes are not only starters for the Las Vegas Aces, but Chelsea Gray is like a really big deal on the offense. Kia Stokes is a really big deal on the defense. So, missing both of them had a lot of people wondering what the Aces were going to show up looking like. And this is all on top of the fact that Candace Parker, who was supposed to be like one of the aces up their sleeve, pun intended or not, but she was supposed to be a really big deal on the team this year. She only played 18 games with the Aces this season, so they were already missing her going into the postseason, and then they end up missing these two going into Game 4. So kind of a big deal. Honestly, in the first half, it looked like the Aces were not going to pull this off. They had like 8 turnovers in the first half that helped the Liberty get like a really big lead. It was at least 10 points going into halftime. And the thing about the Liberty is, every game this season that they've had at least a 10-point lead going into halftime, they've won. They're 10-0 when they're leading by at least 10 points going into the half. So at that point, going into halftime, a lot of people were like, okay, the Aces can't get this done without Chelsea Gray and Kia Stokes. And so we're about to see this go to 5 games. Well, Asia Wilson had something to say about that. There's a reason why she was voted WNBA Finals MVP. So she comes out in the third quarter, and she ends up scoring 9 straight points at some point. So at one point, the game was like 46-35. And then going into the fourth quarter, the Aces went on an 18-5 run, and 9 of those points were scored by Asia Wilson. She was basically sending a signal to her team like, yo, I know this is harder than we expected it to be. I know we're missing some really important people, but we're going to get this done. So, like, I'm going to put y'all on my shoulders and we'll make sure that the win happens. And so then in the fourth quarter, they ended up taking the lead. Liberty closed it. And then I think when they got to the final score of 70-69, there was like still 40 something seconds left. But ultimately, like, the Liberty had the ball last, but Vandersloot missed a 3-pointer. And am I actually lining this up? Is this it? No, the highlights are still in the third quarter. So, spoiler, if you're actually watching these highlights, Vandersloot ends up missing a 3-pointer that would have won them the game had she made it, but she didn't, and so they lost, and that's how that went. So it was actually probably one of the most exciting games, not only of the postseason, but of the entire season, because the Aces, honestly, this thing that they do at the end of the game, they do that to a lot of teams. Um, And that was actually one of the things that made me think they might still win, because a lot of people on social media, even on the broadcast, were like, yeah, the Liberty, they normally win out in these situations. But even I was like, how many times this season, even in the postseason, have we seen the Aces do this thing where just something happens like late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, where they just step on the gas and they're just like, you thought you knew how this was going to end, but we have something to say about that. They've done it to numerous teams all season, and they did it to the Liberty, and it's what won them the championship. So there's a story on that. But if you know me, you know I was really excited about the post-game press conference. So I'm going to play a few funny moments from that, and then we'll get into the Micah Parsons thing after that. I swear, when it comes to sharing my screen, StreamYard does something different every time. So I'm going to start from the beginning of where the Aces first came in, but we're going to skip around after that.
I'm 100% sober this time. Not for long. All right. Ooh, good evening.
And you raise your hand.
I broke my day too.
Hold on. I always have this habit of watching things in like sped up, and I always forget to change it back before I share clips with you guys.
I'm 100% sober this time. Not
Lies.
for long. All right. Ooh, good evening.
And you raise your hand.
I broke my day too. Cut her off. Cool. Yeah.
Begin third row to your right.
For both of you guys, down two starters to come back and play like this. You have players playing the whole game. What did it say about the character of this team?
It's who we are. We're professionals. We're ready when our name is called, and we kept the main thing the main thing. This shit wasn't easy at all, and a lot of people counted us out. A lot of people counted us out from jump. A lot of people in here said Liberty in 5. We know. We know. So that just fueled us. People counted us out as back-to-back champions. Back-to-back. So, like, that shit fueled us. We read it. We see it.
Thank you.
And it fueled us. So thank you. So, yeah, that says a lot about us. We came ready to play. Everybody doubted us. We just kept.
I don't know if it was the champagne or what, but when she's like, everybody doubted us, I'm just like, who are you talking about? Because she's like, yeah, some of y'all in this room said Liberty in 5. That might be true, but I personally don't know anybody who doubted them. But maybe that's one of those things that just goes into being like a champion, where you just have to believe that. You have to convince yourself of that. But like the first time I watched this, she's like, everybody doubted us. And I'm just like, who are you talking about? But anyway,
the foot on the gas.
Continue.
Yeah, they had us game 3. I ain't gonna lie, they did. Game 3 was a little stinker. But hey, we came back and we kept weathering the storm. And now we came back on time.
Next question, front row center.
All right, I'm gonna skip ahead a little
both
bit.
of you, you've been in this league for a while, and they're
Period. Amen. I'm sorry. Not Doug. What was your question? Oh yeah, they have our names in the history book. It's big. It's not easy, as you know. It's not easy. Not a lot of. Yeah. We just can't. Yeah. Wait, y'all. I'm being serious. I'm being serious.
They're so silly. One thing I will say, I want the WNBA audience to grow, but I hope moments like this never stop. I hope they are always just like this.
Oh, I gotta answer this question. Come on, I gotta answer this question. Try to answer it now. I gotta answer the question. 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 Chill.
It's a great question.
It is a great question.
Let us answer.
This is what it's all about. Like, to have your name sketched in history right now with other teams, like, we never gave up. And this is a moment that we need to celebrate. This is a moment that not a lot of people get a chance to do it. And for us to do it and be shorthanded, it's truly amazing. It just makes the win that much more, so that much better. So at the end of the day, it's huge. It, like AC said, it's hard getting back to the finals, but to win it again, it's 10 times harder. And I'm grateful. I'm going to go to war with these wounded warriors every day.
So she said that it was hard, and Kelsey Plum said something similar that I'm going to read in a few minutes. But right now, all I'm going to say is that if an MVP and a champion, an Olympian says it's hard, I'm going to just take her word for it. I know people want to think that it's easy. They want to say, like, oh, it's a super team. Oh, Asia Wilson is naturally gifted. And it may be true. Maybe she is naturally gifted, and maybe it is a super team. But I think that doesn't negate the fact that it might still take a lot of work, especially when you're considering the fact that, like, yeah, they're going against other teams of professional athletes who want this just as bad as they do. But let me play one more clip from Becky Hammond, and then I'll read y'all that quote that I just told y'all about.
To either player, and Becky, you're welcome to answer this if you'd like. What does it mean not only to be at the top, but have been at the top all year, having started at the top and stayed there and kept it, and now be there
Becky,
and win
you
this
got
final
this
series that was the matchup that everybody waited all year for?
I don't know if it was the matchup everybody waited all year for.
All right, now Becky, slow up. Now they ain't ready for that.
I think we ended the year 42-7. We had our
42 games? Are we the NBA?
49, girl.
49? What the fuck? What am I doing still playing?
You get a
Hey, JT, what's
long
up?
rest now. You get a long rest.
We changed seasons.
Yeah, we did.
Oh,
But
wow.
this one's
How you don't even know how many games he played? But anyway,
this one's sweeter. It just is. It's harder to do. We went from darling to villain real quick. We had our names, our good names slandered. And all these women did was lock in together. And you ask why I'm so confident? It's because I know exactly who's in that locker room. I know exactly who I'm going to war with every day. This is the tightest. This is one of the probably the tightest group I've ever been around. And
I've seen a lot coming from Becky
they're a
Hammond.
special group. I don't know. I don't know what else you can throw at them. I don't know what else you can throw at them.
Facts, because we've been through some stuff this year, man.
And then they didn't say nothing. And it's hard to not say nothing when people are lying about you. And all we did is buckle down and keep playing. And that was our mantra. Keep playing. Next play, keep playing. Offensively, keep playing. Defensively, keep playing. And this is a testament that your character, it will be like your culture. And if you have bad character, you'll have bad culture. And we had plenty of times to fall apart. But because of their character and the culture we build, you can't crack this group. You just can't. And as you can see, we have professionals sitting on that bench waiting for a time. And they showed up. So I'm glad all y'all are up here. Kayla, Sydney,
Yeah.
Lay, everybody. That's why we're all up here.
Yeah.
You guys have been waiting patiently in the wings, locked in. They don't know. They found out tonight.
Facts. I'm talking to you, Martin. Facts. Well, both of y'all. It's like those people showed up. And yes, Becky Hammond has been around some legendary teams. So when she says it's the tightest group that she's been around, I'm like, yo, that's pretty major. But just listening to this press conference, like there's a lot more that I didn't play. But from what I did play, I'd say I have a few major takeaways as far as what it takes to build like championship culture. One, you got to know when to have fun. And that fun should come after you win. This type of fun. Like if you watch their social media, you know they had fun. But like this type of fun, like getting fucked up and just going crazy in a press conference, like, yeah, like look forward to that after you win the whole thing. Have fun in the meantime, though. Like they definitely are a fun group. Like watching their clips, it looks like they have a good time. So have fun. Pay attention to your culture. Make sure the culture is one that you want, one that like really supports the team. And no matter how good you are, you have to tell yourself that everybody is rooting against you. Oh, and make sure you always have a boombox on hand or that's probably a Bluetooth speaker. But yeah, make sure you have a Bluetooth speaker. And no matter how good you are, make sure you always remind yourself that nobody wants to see you win and everybody is rooting against you. That's key. Martin said, I bet Asia was sick this morning. Maybe, but I think she only does this once a year. So JT, I didn't read your comment. Oh, never mind. That's not for the audience. Watching the shookness of the media after Micah called them out. We're actually about to get to that in a second. I'm gonna read this one quote real quick though from Kelsey Plum. So actually, let me stop sharing my screen. Go back to full view. Ta-da. So yeah, Kelsey Plum said she was talking to Haley Rowe like right after the game ended. So like right after the final buzzer. She said, you can't build a super team in a couple months. It takes years. Plum was drafted first overall by the Aces, then the San Antonio Stars in 2017. WNBA Finals MVP Asia Wilson was the first overall pick in 2018 with guard Jackie Young. And then the team added key veterans Chelsea Gray and Kia Stokes in 2021. And that doesn't even count the moves that they made coming into the 2023 season. So yeah, even though people look at them as a super team now, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot that went into how this team was formed. There was a lot that put them in a position to hire someone like Becky Hammon. And so yeah, I guess I say that to I guess serve as inspiration a little bit. Sometimes it feels like we watch people become a success overnight, and a lot of times people really don't account for all the small moves that made the way or laid the foundation for the bigger moves that led to what is now known as a super team. And same thing that goes for businesses, for successful creators, successful artists. There are usually so many small moves that lay the foundation for what we ultimately see as like their success story. So props to the Aces. I don't doubt that they could do it again, especially if like, Candace Parker comes back to the team and she's healthy and they have a healthy Kia Stokes and a healthy Chelsea Gray. Yeah, I feel like the sky's the limit for them. But I do have some other favorite WNBA players who I'd like to see win, but we'll save that for another time. So let's get to the main event. Martin said, man, those rings should be in San Antonio. I know. Every time I think about the fact that like technically that is a team that left San Antonio, it does kind of make me a little bit sick. Cause like, do you know how much fun I would have like just driving an hour and a half to go watch them? That would make my life. But even that move from San Antonio to Vegas is one of the moves that set them up to be the team that they are now. So hey, it is what it is. But yeah, okay. So let's talk about this whole Micah Parsons situation. Um, when I first decided to address the situation, like, so if you follow me on Twitter, you know every week I have to write a certain number of articles for Inside the Star. And it's been a little bit more difficult lately just because I've had so much going on in my life. And so when it comes to like certain articles that just come easier to me, I've written about Micah Parsons, like social media uh, drama, if you will. I've written about that stuff before. So yesterday, when is it still yesterday? I'm like, what time is it? Yeah, yesterday, when everything started happening on Twitter with him responding to people in the media, I knew it would become a thing. But I was just like, okay, I'm gonna write about it. And I just told my editor, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna write about this because I know how to turn things like that into an actual story. It's not just like, hey, look at this drama between Micah Parsons and the media. There were certain things that I knew I wanted to say. Martin said, I'm sick of jazz. What? Oh, sick as fuck. Sorry. Are you sick right now? Sorry, I couldn't read right. I was like, you're sick of me. What did I do? Um, I really need to stop reading comments while I'm trying to talk, y'all. But anyway, so I just planned to write about it and kind of throw in a few examples of when the media had been like unfair towards the Cowboys, like times when they had, basically evaluated the Cowboys' loss and then looked at a similar loss by a different team and evaluated them differently, which it happened fairly often, So that was kind of my plan to be like, okay, this is what Micah Parsons said. Here are some examples of what he's talking about. This is why it sucks. Boom, 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 whatever. So everything kind of plays out on social media. I even woke up this morning and I was like, I wonder if people are still talking about this. And I said that even though yesterday, and I like if I were the type of person to do it, I could show y'all screenshots of the text messages. I was texting someone yesterday and we were literally talking about how oh yeah, the morning shows will probably talk about it tomorrow. And actually, no, now that I think about it, it wasn't text message, it was on the phone. But me and this person were talking and we were like, yeah, Kimberly Martin is usually on Get Up, and sometimes she's on Get Up and First Take, but they're probably not going to talk about it on Get Up, but they'll probably save it. It's more of a First Take topic, you know? But I watched Get Up and they barely talked about the Cowboys. And so in my mind, I was like, are they actually going to address it? They might not even address it because it was several minutes into First Take before they even said anything about it. And I had literally texted this person. I was like, man, I don't think they're actually going to talk about it today. And right when that happened, Molly Karen was like, yeah, when we come back, Southern Steve has some comments from Micah Parsons or something like that. And I was like, oh, so they are going to talk about it. But she said Southern Steve. So I thought they were going to turn it into like a gimmick thing. And I was just like, oh, this is turning so gross, you know? But they didn't. They actually ended up having just the 5 panelists who were on the show at the time ended up having just a civil conversation about it. And when I say civil, I mean, they didn't turn it into like a gimmick. Like Southern Steve didn't come out. He didn't have the hat or the cigar or anything like that. But the stuff that they were saying just like did not sit right with me. I was watching thinking that they would give me maybe a few seconds to post on Twitter and some things to add to my article and I was going to move on. But as I was watching, I literally was like, first of all, I can't believe they're talking about this for so long. Secondly, just the stuff that they were saying, I was like, are these the points that y'all have? Like these are really the hills that y'all are going to die on. And so ultimately, what they were saying was similar to what Stephen A said in a video that he had released on YouTube a couple of hours before the segment took place on First Take. Let me pause and look at y'all's comments. Oh, it's mostly emojis. And Martin clarified that he is not sick of me. We are both sickened by the fact that the Aces were moved from San Antonio. So yeah, Stephen A, he does a Stephen A. Smith show, which is essentially like a video podcast similar to what Micah Parsons does on Monday nights. So he had put out a video yesterday morning. Then he went on First Take and put out, or not put out, but did this segment with all the other panelists who were on First Take that day. And their arguments basically came down to, now this is why it's important. Before I get to what their arguments were, this is why it's important to actually listen to what Micah Parsons said and actually understand what he was saying, because some of the clips that were used on mainstream media, they were short because, one, mainstream media, they always shorten things. They don't have just unlimited amounts of time like I do. If I wanted to, I could have this live stream go till 2 a.m. So they have limited amounts of time, but also I do think that they clipped out certain parts that lend themselves to the conversation that they wanted to have, which is either slightly different than the conversation Micah wanted to have, or they're idiots. At this point, I don't know which one. Actually, no, let me not be stupid. I know which one. I know they're not stupid. I know Stephen A. Smith is not stupid, but he is in a position, I think, where he can't and won't back down. He can't and won't just admit that what he's doing is kind of messed up. And I'm gonna explain it in a way that lets y'all know why exactly it's messed up. But the point that Micah Parsons was making was basically, hey, when it comes to the criticism of Dak Prescott, when it comes to the criticism of the Dallas Cowboys, the way that y'all criticize my quarterback, the way that y'all criticize my team, it's more heavy-handed than what y'all do with these other teams. Y'all criticize them more harshly. Y'all hold things against them that you don't hold against these other teams. When other teams have surprising losses, when they lose games that people didn't expect them to lose, y'all account for all the circumstances that could have led to the loss. And y'all take it into account and you discuss it and you show them grace and you make sure that the public understands that those losses are not a representative of their, or not representative of their actual skill. You make sure that there's understanding You make sure that there's context. You discuss the nuance of the situation that led to those losses. However, when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, it's like y'all boil it all down to like, well, the Cowboys, they're just gonna always let you down. Something's always gonna go wrong. Dak Prescott, he just can't cut it. He's just not cut out to be a championship quarterback. He's not a top 10 quarterback. It's like always that for every loss. They don't take into consideration the circumstances that might have led to, certain things that we see during the game. And so that's the point that Micah Parsons was trying to make. And so there are two things interesting about what happened. One of the interesting things is that Micah Parsons on his podcast, he talked about the fact that he didn't make himself available for the media that normally shows up in the locker room during the week when the Cowboys are at the Star and also after games. But it wasn't the beat writers who were making a big deal out of things on their broadcast. It was people like Kimberly Martin and Emmanuel Acho and Stephen A. Smith, who technically Micah Parsons wasn't talking to when he said that he didn't want to talk to the media. That's not who he was talking about. But I guess when he said, hey, the criticism of Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys is uneven, is heavy-handed, I guess that hit a nerve with those people, especially Emmanuel Acho and Kimberly Martin. They were the people who responded first. Now, Kimberly Martin, she responded on Get Up. So maybe that was just part of what they had planned to discuss that day, and maybe she would not have addressed it otherwise. Emmanuel Acho, on the other hand, he actually made a personal video on his Twitter before he ever said anything on Speak. So he definitely took it personally. He either took it personally in the sense that he was like, okay, Micah Parsons talking about me, or he took it personally in the sense that, hey, it's close enough to me to where I can get some views, I can get some impressions, I can get some engagement off of this. These days, it's hard to tell which one it really is. And honestly, it doesn't matter. So Micah Parsons responded to both of them. And he also put out a tweet that has since been deleted. So I'm going to read it. I put a picture of this tweet in my article, but I'm going to read it to you guys just in case anybody missed it and just in case anybody did not read my article and see this particular tweet. Where is it? Nope, that's not it. Here it is. So Micah Parsons tweeted this, and this was actually the first tweet that I saw. Somebody tagged me in a quote tweet to this tweet, and it said, I honestly feel bad for people who listen to this bullshit. This is Micah Parsons talking about the media, right? He put this out on Twitter. He said, I honestly feel bad for people who listen to this bullshit. I've seen Twitter scammers put out better content than these ESPN analysts. So that's what he said. And that was the point at which I was like, how do the Dallas Cowboys feel about him saying that? And not long after that, though, the Dallas Cowboys put out a clip of Micah Parsons' video where he was criticizing the media. And they were just like, yeah, Micah Parsons brought the heat when he talked about the media yesterday or something like that. But it was supportive. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's up then. Like the Cowboys clearly have no issues with this. But fast forward to Stephen A. Smith. It was Stephen A. Smith, Dan Orlovsky, Kimberly Martin, Damian Woody, and Molly Karam. And if y'all want to see part of this segment, like if you haven't seen it, you want to see part of it, let me know. I can pull up my tweet and share it with y'all, but it's like a really long segment. So I know I won't be able to play all of it. So I'll just describe it. Ray Babineau said, Micah actually named Acho in the podcast. No, Roy. Sorry, it is late and my contacts are getting to that point where I need to like rinse them. So that's why I'm like not seeing certain letters. And that's why earlier I misread Martin's message and I just now misread Roy's name. Thank you, Roy, for that detail. Because I'll be honest, I didn't remember details like that verbatim. But the overall argument, I'm pretty sure I got right. Anyway, so fast forward to this morning on First Take. And Stephen A. Smith, Kimberly Martin, Molly Karam, Dan Orlovsky, and Damian Woody are all standing up there talking about this situation. And the thing that bugged me, the thing that led me to making that long tweet was their arguments basically were boiled down to a few things. And I wrote them down so I didn't remember the main points that they made. Because these were the same points that Stephen A. Smith made in his video. So one of them was the fan base. Oh, the fan base always acts like they believe the Dallas Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl, and so that's why we do this. Another one was it's been so many years since the Cowboys won a championship. And so that's why we do this. And the third reason, not necessarily in that order, they kept kind of rotating and going back and forth between the three of them. The third one was, well, it's a $9.2 billion franchise that hasn't won a championship recently, and that's why they do this. And so that's why I was just like, okay, either y'all are willfully ignorant, or you literally don't understand what Micah Parsons is saying. Micah Parsons isn't saying that you shouldn't, judge the Cowboys against other teams because the Cowboys haven't won a championship. I truly believe that if it was just pundits going on their shows every day and being like, hey, we don't believe that the Dallas Cowboys are going to make it to a championship, and here's why, I don't think there would be as much of a problem. The issue is that these guys are actually negatively impacting the reputation of these players. They're representing them as less skilled than they actually are. They are painting them in a negative light to the public, to NFL fans. Um, and it's being done unfairly. Like Micah Parsons is basically saying, hey, these players, my quarterback, this team, they haven't done anything to deserve it. And I think whenever you take the reasons that Stephen A provided and you make it a full sentence along with what is actually the impact of his words, you see just how ridiculous it is that that's the reasoning that Stephen A provides, right? So we're talking about, like, let's take Dak Prescott alone, for example, and let's just examine what they do to Dak Prescott's reputation as a player. And this has been shown repeatedly. Like, we've literally seen video of people saying that they think Dak Prescott sucks. I've met people who, and by their own admission, do not watch football, do not follow the Dallas Cowboys, but they'll tell me like, oh, well, I know Dak Prescott sucks. And I'm just like, okay, so you don't even watch the game, and somehow you got, like, where did you get that from? Like, you got that from somewhere. And so it's like, what they're doing essentially is taking a hardworking guy, a top 10 quarterback who just so happens to have not made a Super Bowl, and I'll get to that in a second. But they're taking a hardworking guy, good quarterback overall, and representing him as a bad quarterback, an unworthy player, somebody who doesn't deserve his money, supposedly. That's what they're painting him as in the media. So in a nutshell, they're ruining his reputation. And they're saying it's because of the fan base, it's because of the championship, it's because they're a $9.2 billion franchise. So let's put that in a full sentence. Because the Dallas Cowboys fan base believes every year their team has what it takes to make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to ruin Dak Prescott's reputation as an athlete. Now, when I say that out loud, does that make any sense? Even if you flip it, we're going to ruin Dak Prescott's reputation as an athlete. We are going to disparage him at every turn. We are going to mock him, and we're going to make fun of his failures. And even when it's not his fault, we're going to say that it's his fault. We're going to manipulate stats. We're going to make up numbers. We're going to talk about stuff that we don't care about with any other team. And we're going to do all of that because he has an enthusiastic fan base. Are you fucking serious? Like, seriously? That's really your idea of a good reason, Stephen A. Smith? Like, come on now. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Martin says, give Jalen Hurts the same energy as Dak when he threw three interceptions away. They're not going to. And then so the next one, the fact that they haven't won a championship in so many years. And I talked about this in my tweet. That one really gets on my nerves because people act like the Cowboys are the only team that's gone, 27, 28 years without a championship. Like, there are literally people who get on the Cowboys about how long it's been since they won a championship. And those same people, when you ask them, they're literally ignorant to the fact that there are franchises out there who have yet to win a championship at all. At all. And so when Kimberly Martin says, and here's a quick disclaimer. Actually, no, I'm gonna save the disclaimer. I'm gonna just say I don't have anything against Kimberly Martin. I'm actually a Kimberly A. Martin fan. But when she says stuff like, Micah, the Cowboys haven't won a championship since before you were born. And what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, You know who else hasn't won a championship since before Micah Parsons was born? The 49ers. And Kimberly Martin was saying all this stuff about, like, oh, it's about the unmet expectations. The Cowboys aren't meeting expectations. And I'm like, well, if winning a Super Bowl is your expectation, then the 49ers also have unmet expectations because they also have been in a position to win. They've gotten to the playoffs several times and fallen short in big moments. They also have not won a Super Bowl since before Micah Parsons was born. So if the issue really is unmet expectations, why is it that only the Dallas Cowboys are being held accountable for not meeting expectations, but all these other teams cannot meet expectations and it's completely fine. We're still going to judge them fairly. If we talk about them, we're going to talk about them and make sure that we add context to the conversation. It doesn't make any sense. And Roy said, Washington hasn't won either. There are several teams that have not won a Super Bowl. And so that's why that argument is like really on my nerves, because I'm just like, what are y'all trying to say? Are y'all trying to say that every franchise should win a championship every 27, 28 years? Because if that's the case, you're still leaving out 4 or 5 teams that are going to go through that rotation and not win. So like, make it make sense. There's one champion every year, only one. Now, I've said, the team, the Dallas Cowboys, like Dak Prescott said during the offseason, he was like, yeah, it's Super Bowl or bust this year. If they want to put that pressure on themselves, fine. I do not think it's fair for fans and for the media to put that pressure on them like the team owes anybody a championship, because they don't. Victor Lee said Vikings, Browns, Jags, Texans, Panthers, and Bills have never won a Super Bowl. Thank you for that list, Victor Lee. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate that. So just no matter how you slice it or dice it, where you want to look at it in so many years, whether you want to look at it as like, oh, before Micah Parsons was born, whether you want to look at it as teams that haven't won a championship at all, there are so many other teams that this applies to that negates that argument, that it doesn't even make sense to even keep bringing it up. I don't know why people keep doing it, except that other people just keep allowing them to get away with it. Now, regarding Kimberly A. Martin, and my fandom of Kimberly, I like watching her. And the one thing that I didn't like about what was happening this morning is that people were replying to my tweet and they were retweeting my tweet. And they had some really negative things to say about Kimberly. Like, y'all, Kimberly's not an idiot. She's not stupid. She's not someone who doesn't deserve to talk about sports. She is just someone who has an argument. From my perspective, she has an argument that I don't agree with. I feel like I can still be a fan of someone and just disagree with their perspective on a particular topic. So I don't think any of those things about her. I did not mention her in that tweet for her to be disparaged and torn down and for people to act like she doesn't deserve to be where she is, because I feel like she's worked hard to be where she is. And on most things, she and I agree. But also most of the things that she covers um, aren't really as controversial. And that brings me to another point. A lot of people have been saying things like, oh, these people are bad analysts. They're not good at analyzing the game. And so as fans, I think one thing that we really need to start doing is paying a little bit closer attention to who we're calling analysts and to the people whose opinions that we value. Because real talk, a lot of the people that we're judging for not being good analysts, they're not analysts. Kimberly Martin, if you look at her, like, the tag that usually shows up for her when she's on various shows on ESPN, and even if you look at, sorry, there's like a cord under my leg and it's like scratching me. Even if you look at like her Wikipedia, she is called a reporter. She's called a broadcaster. Sometimes she's called a commentator. Sometimes she's called on-air talent. They don't call her an analyst. A lot of the people on these shows are not actually called analysts. And so if what you're expecting is analysis, I think it's important that you look for actual analysts to provide that analysis. But if you're watching shows like First Take, shows like Get Up, a lot of that is entertainment. It's meant to cater to the masses. It's literally meant to cater to people who don't know the game that well. It's meant to be entertaining and informative for people who actually don't know the game. A lot of times I compare it to fast food. Let me read a couple of these comments and I'll explain that analogy. Roy said, Dallas fans have never booed anyone while injured like Philly fans have on multiple occasions. This is facts. Washington Dolphins, Las Vegas haven't won in a long time. This is also facts. So my fast food analogy for shows like First Take and shows like Get Up. I'm not one of those people that will say don't watch it, but I will say be aware of what you're watching. So, for example, I'm a personal trainer. A lot of times I have to help people with their nutrition. I have to give them tips. Like not I'm not a dietitian, so I don't like make meal plans for people, but I will provide guidelines based on what they say their goals are. And so when it comes to things like fast food, and people will be like, I'm going on a trip or I'm going out with friends. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? Da da da. My advice to them is always make sure that you track what you're eating. There are some cases where you do want to be careful about the quality of the food that you're putting in your body. But at the end of the day, for the most part, it's just like make sure that you're tracking what you're eating. Make sure you know what your calories are. Make sure you know what your macronutrients are. I'm not going to tell anybody that they shouldn't eat something unless it really just doesn't align with their goals and it's really that harmful to them reaching their goals. Otherwise, if it fits in your macros, if it fits in your calories, whatever. And so for me, shows like Get Up and like First Take are kind of fast food in that sense. I'm not going to tell you to watch it, but if it affects your mental state, because for some people it really does. If it affects your mental state, if it affects your mood, if it affects your day, then don't watch it. Another food analogy is this. So I consider like whenever I take my time with an article or when I take my time getting points together for a live stream, I compare that to like preparing like a Thanksgiving dinner, like a 4 or 5 course meal. You take your time with it, you make sure you do a good job, you make sure it's quality. You want it to be something that the people who enjoy it, they really enjoy, something that they'll remember, that they'll come back for, that they'll be like, yes, that was great, right? Now, anybody who's ever like gone to like a big family Thanksgiving, you'll notice that what happens sometimes is that the people who are cooking, they want everything to come out at the same time, but they'll start to have company come over before the food is ready. And so they might be like, here, snack on this while I'm cooking. Try not to ruin your appetite. Here, eat this, right? Here, snack on that. Here's an appetizer, whatever. And so when I cook for people, I'll do that all the time, whether it's a big meal like Thanksgiving meal, or if it's something that's like a gumbo night or something where I'm making one thing, but it's a big thing. It takes time. My gumbo takes 3 days to cook, right? Or it's cooked in 3 stages, I should say. I'm not like literally simmering it for 3 days, but yeah, I put a lot of time and love into my gumbo. Anyway, but if somebody were to come over before my gumbo was ready, I might be like, here's like some hors d'oeuvres while I'm preparing this food. And it might be something that I don't even eat. It might be something that I don't normally keep in the house normally. But it's something that, like, okay, I know they'll like it. So I'm going to just give them this until the food is ready. And so for me, a lot of times the clips that I post on social media, that's what it is. It's like, okay, I know I'm only going to go live once or twice a week. I know I'm only going to put out a few articles a week, but I'll put out these clips a few times a day just to make sure there's engagement, just to make sure I keep the conversation going. And then the people who don't ruin their appetite, who are willing to come around for live streams like this one, who are willing to read my articles, they get the good stuff. They get the stuff that I've actually taken my time with, that I've actually worked on. So when it comes to watching the clips on social media, when it comes to watching the shows on TV, really just think about the quality of what you're watching and the fact that it's not supposed to be like the well thought out and like well analyzed takes. A lot of these people, they're not watching the film. They're not even going into advanced analytics, a lot of them, so it's just those are things that you want to take into consideration whenever you're thinking about what to expect from those people. So that being said, another point that I made, I can't remember if I made it in the tweet or in the article, but I know people who spend hours a week covering the Cowboys, and they don't do it from nearly as negative of a perspective as what we see in mainstream media. And the reason why I bring that up is this. One of the main points that people are missing in what Micah said, they keep trying to make it sound like, oh, Mike is running away from the media. Like they literally said that on First Take. They were like, oh, he's running away from the smoke. He doesn't want the media attention. Why wouldn't you want the media attention? Micah never said he didn't want the attention. What he said was bring that same energy to every team. What he said was, hey, that same consideration that y'all give them when they have a bad game, we want the same consideration. That is not energy that you bring to the conversation is not the same thing as the amount of coverage. And so If you're covering the Cowboys a lot and you feel like the only way to do it is to be negative, that is a you problem. That's a lack of creativity on your part. That is you not understanding various ways to cover the game and different things that you can bring to the table in terms of conversation, in terms of debate, in terms of an argument. Because I watch people every day who sometimes what they have to say about the team is positive. Sometimes they have criticism and they have a list of things that they want the Cowboys to do different or do better. Sometimes they see the players doing things in social media, or on YouTube or whatever that they approve of. Sometimes they don't approve. But either way, what they say is fair. What they say is well researched. What they say is well thought through. So when I see these people who, like, literally it's their source of income to cover the Cowboys and only the Cowboys every day, and they manage to do it fairly day in, day out, week after week, hour after hour. But then these people who are being paid millions of dollars have the nerve to go on TV and be like, well, we have to cover the Cowboys, so this is why y'all get criticized. I'm like, no, I call bullshit. I call bullshit, because you do not have to be unfair. You do not have to harshly criticize Dak Prescott over and over again and unfairly criticize Dak Prescott over and over again just because you have to cover the Cowboys a lot. Now, if what's actually happened is that there's an expectation to cover the Cowboys a lot and you've become bitter, this is one of the main things I didn't understand about their argument. They kept saying things like, well, it's the nature of the business. That's just the way it is. The Cowboys are the most popular franchise. And I'm just like, you realize y'all control that narrative, right? Y'all are talking about the nature of the business as though y'all aren't the business. I'm like, Emmanuel Acho, you go on Twitter and make personal videos on Twitter away from the rest of your cast, away from the producers, outside of your studio, all the time when you feel like you have something to say, all the time. So you mean to tell me that if you really feel like other players don't deserve just as much shine, they don't deserve just as much coverage, you couldn't just as easily turn your phone on, record a video about TJ Watt, record a video about Myles Garrett, and put it out on Twitter if you really felt like there was something to say? You could absolutely do that. Stephen A. Smith, you have your own show. You have your own video podcast. You can literally talk about whatever the fuck you want. Stephen A. Smith, the other day, you put out a video about Jada Pinkett Smith. Why the fuck are you talking about Jada Pinkett? So I'm like, if you can talk about Jada Pinkett, you can talk about all these players that you say aren't getting enough attention. If you can talk about Jada, you can provide positive coverage of the Cowboys if you want to. When y'all start talking about not even sports adjacent stuff, just stuff that has nothing to do with the world of sports on your personal platforms, that to me is evidence that you can talk about whatever you want. So don't sit here and tell us, well, it's the nature of the business. Like, you don't have a choice. You control the nature of the business. Y'all literally control the narrative. So why the hell are you getting here on national television and acting like you just don't have a choice? Like, y'all can take the narrative and make it go whichever way you want to. Same way Undisputed did a show where they talked about the Cowboys damn near for the entire 2 hours. I watched Get Up do the opposite this morning. They hardly talked about the Cowboys at all. There was one segment where they talked about teams that were coming, that like this was their bye week, and they talked about what they wanted to see from those teams after the bye week. And they talked about the Cowboys during that segment, and at no other point did they talk about Dak Prescott or the Dallas Cowboys. So it can be done, and it was informative. I learned some things about the Raiders that I didn't know before. I learned some things about um the Browns that I didn't know before. I even learned some things about John Morant. I hadn't heard about John Morant's suspension. I wasn't up to speed with what was happening on that. And I was just like, oh, dang. Like, it's literally in my notes. Next time I go live, I need to talk about the John Morant suspension. But I heard about that from watching Get Up, because they were like, hey, Cowboys are on a bye week. We ain't got to talk about them today. So we're not. It's really that simple. And with all y'all having a personal platform, y'all could do the same thing. Kimberly Martin literally called out Clarence Hill Jr., one of the beat writers for the Cowboys, called him out on Twitter. So you could just as easily make a tweet about any other player that you feel like deserves attention over the Dallas Cowboys players, if y'all feel like it's so unfair. So I'm just like, if y'all think this narrative is so bad, do something about it. You are literally in a position to do something about it, yet you don't. Yet you use that as justification to disparage players, to unfairly criticize them, to drag the Cowboys through the mud. It's crazy to me. It's crazy. So Martin said Acho thinks he's cooking too. He really does. They all think they do that they are. And so like that's kind of my thing at this point. Yesterday there was a long Twitter space about all this, and I said a lot in that space, but for now I'm going to boil it down to two things. One, as fans, we have the option of who we give our attention to. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm not going to watch First Take or Get Up anymore. I said that before and I started watching again because honestly, there are a lot of people I love on those shows. Molly Karam is one of them. She was the only person on First Take who was making sense. And she literally, hold on, I got to pull up my article just so I can read this quote because she literally said verbatim what was happening. And like, they did not want her to talk. They did not want her to talk. So one of the things that Molly Karam said, let me scroll down. I wrote way more about this topic than I expected to. So like when you read this article, be prepared for a pretty long one. Um so everybody was taking turns talking, and Molly Karam was like about 5 minutes into the conversation, she was like, hold on, let me talk. Because I think she's hearing all this bullshit and she's like, nah, this is wrong. Um, and so she said this at one point. She said, "We don't bring the same energy when the Eagles lose to the Jets as we would with the Cowboys, but the expectations are supposed to be even higher for Philly. He's just pointing out a hypocrisy." She literally said this in front of all of them, and they were like, "No, no, 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 it's not hypocrisy." But she spelled it out. She was like, "Y'all, he's right. We don't bring the same energy." Like she said over and over again, she was like, no, Micah's right. He's right. We don't bring the same energy. He's right. She said that verbatim. And all they did was talk over her and tried to change the subject. And they eventually ended the conversation. But here's the thing about Molly Karam. Although First Take is associated with Stephen A. Smith, the host is Molly Karam. Molly Karam is the host. Molly Karam is the person that when the topic needs to switch or they need to go to break or there's someone who isn't getting enough talk time, the producers are in her ear telling her when to point to someone else, when to go to break, when to end a conversation, when to go to the next segment. So she is keenly aware of the topics they discuss, how they discuss them, and who makes what points about who. Who says what about what team? She has to be. She's there day in and day out for every episode except for when she's off. And a lot of times Stephen A. Smith is off for just as many episodes. But, you know, a lot of us, we might only watch a clip of or two of First Take. We might only watch part of the show. We might only watch it a couple times a week. Molly Karam is there every day. She has the producers in her ear for the whole show. She knows every topic. She knows every take. It's literally her job to know. So when Molly Karam says, no, Micah Parsons is right, we don't keep the same energy, she has a point. Out of anybody on that panel, she is the person that people should be listening to when she's like, nah, we don't keep the same energy. Listen to me. So I was really glad that the responses to my tweet were overwhelmingly supportive. The people who weren't supportive, they just said random stuff. I'm really proud of myself for getting to the point where I can laugh at those people now, because there was a point in my life where it's like it really got to me. Some of the things that people would say when they'd be like, "Oh, Cowboys fans, all y'all do is cry," and I'd be like, "No, we don't," da da da, and I'd like go back and forth with them, and be like, "We're not crying, we're making a point about yada yada," and now I just kind of like laugh and I just like keep scrolling. A lot of those motherfuckers, like literally, one of those assholes today had like 8 followers. I'm like, I am not about to argue with some asshole who's probably just using my posts for engagement for himself anyway. Um, like get to the double digits and come back, and then maybe we'll talk. But yeah, so going back to what I was saying about the two things for us to do as fans. Like one, we have the option of where we put our energy. They don't want to keep the same energy, fine. We can choose where we put our energy. So if you want to stop watching them, you're well within your right. There's so many content creators, especially in the morning. If you're a morning sports person, you're a Cowboys fan, Will Still in the Morning is great to watch. If you know me, you know I love watching Voch Lombardi in the afternoons. I also like watching Law Nation. Who else? Cowboys Fan Talk is really good. He puts out videos occasionally. My favorite show with the .com is Girls Talk Boys Talk. So even if you decide, hey, I'm just going to watch the YouTube clips of First Take, or I'm just going to watch First Take once a week, fine. Like maybe you just watch it on Mondays to catch up with what's going on with the rest of the NFL, and that's it. Um, Even Get Up, in my opinion, has a lot better NFL overall commentary than First Take if you actually have to make that choice. Um, but yeah, you have a choice as to where you put your energy. And then the other thing that I want everybody to keep in mind is that people keep saying, don't respond to these commentators, don't respond to these reporters because you're giving them what they want. They want engagement, they want attention. But I urge y'all to remember a very important phrase that became popular this year. And that phrase is fuck around and find out. And what that phrase essentially means is that sometimes you might think you want something and you might put an effort to get it. And then you find out that that thing you thought you wanted is not really what you wanted. And here's what I mean by that. The same way that these reporters are ruining Dak's reputation, they're making the Cowboys look bad, they call into question the skills of some otherwise very good players. Same thing could happen to them with enough attention. Because all that's really happened with Dak Prescott is that a lot of people who are deemed to be experts have come out and said, we don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. We don't think he's that good. We don't think he can get the job done. We don't think the Cowboys deserve to be in the conversation with XYZ team. And then people hear that over and over again, and they start to believe those people. Well, the people who are doing that to our favorite players, Cowboys Nation can do the same thing to them. Because while they might enjoy the attention now, after so many times of thousands of people being like, you're wrong, your takes are shit, your argument sounds stupid, we can tell you don't watch film, you're not a real reporter, you're not a good analyst. After so many times of that happening, other people will start to be like, oh, yeah, that person is an idiot. Oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. So they might like the engagement and the attention now. But over time, when it starts to turn on them and when it starts to become negative, and I'm not saying this to do this just because someone's on ESPN, because there are some people who like make really good points. Dan Orlovsky has made some really good points lately. Ryan Clark makes some really good points. I love watching Swagoo. I even like watching Kimberly Martin most of the time. So be fair about it by all means. But we know that there are some people on some of these networks who everything out of their mouths about the Cowboys is negative. Everything out of their mouths is like, not only is it negative, but it doesn't even make sense half the time. It's just some take that they manipulated to fit their narrative. And they're constantly moving the goalposts. I don't know how they haven't thrown their back out moving the goalposts. But yeah, Cowboys Nation can do the same thing to them. So don't ignore them. Everybody has been like, nah, ignore them, turn the other cheek, don't give them attention. No, they want attention, give it to them. Point out where they're wrong. Point out where their takes are bad. Point out where their takes sound stupid. Point out where it's clear that they're trying to speak on something that they clearly haven't watched. Point out where it's clear that they're trying to analyze a game that they clearly haven't watched film of, that they clearly haven't like done a deep dive into like the advanced analytics of. Like, point them out, call them out, and then see how long they still want that attention. They're going to have two options. They're either going to have to get better at their job or they're going to have to quit doing what they're doing. So, when it comes to public criticism, that works both ways. And at this point, all I can say is that they've asked for it. So that's pretty much all I have to say. But to sum up, because I always like to tell them what I'm going to say it, and then tell them what I said. The main points that I feel like people are missing when it comes to Micah Parsons is that it's not that he doesn't want the Cowboys to get like less coverage. He just wants the coverage to be fair. And he's not saying that the Cowboys should never be criticized. All he wants to do is see that like the same way that other teams get both criticism and consideration, he wants the same thing for the Cowboys. Criticism and consideration. So for example, when the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals, and Mike McCarthy said that he overreacted to the fact that they were missing 3 starting offensive linemen. I think I heard one person on one show literally like just passively mention the offensive linemen. And like, it's up to you whether you feel like that's a good reason, but to not mention it at all does a disservice to the team. And that's really all they're saying is that like, yo, you mentioned all these other things for other teams with the Bengals. You talk about Jeff Burrow's calf with Justin Herbert. I heard people talking about how his injured thumb could be affecting how he takes the snap. And so even though the thumb isn't on his throwing hand, it could be affecting his passing. We've heard people talk over and over again about Jalen Hurts having a new offensive coordinator, as though Dak Prescott isn't also dealing with a new offensive coordinator and other coaching changes, mind you, right? Um, so yeah, that's all he's asking for, and that seems to be the point that most people are missing. It seems like Micah is very well aware that the Cowboys are going to get more attention, but everything else after that, honestly, there's no justification for it. Saying that you judge the Cowboys more harshly because they have an enthusiastic fan base, or because the franchise is worth $9.2 billion, or because they haven't won a championship since before Micah Parsons was born. None of those arguments hold water. So like, let's just cut it out. Let's cut it out. I'm gonna read the last of y'all's comments, and Martin says, "Get Up is pretty decent." It really is most of the time. I love it. 8 followers is crazy. It really is. It really is. I'm like, and I'm not even trying to make myself sound like I'm big shit, but it's just like, I'll put it this way. Like when I have as many notifications as I did today, I literally can't get to everybody. I literally can't. So if I happen to scroll across somebody's comment who like you have 8 followers and half a bio, I can't put my energy towards you, dog. Like there are people who are actually engaging in good, constructive conversations, and that's where my energy is gonna go. Martin said, "We're on them like ants." If we weren't before, we better be now. It's going to be a lot of fun coming out of this bye week because a lot of these guys have woken up people in Cowboys Nation who were quiet before. So the next part of this season is going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting sick. I don't know if y'all can hear it in my throat. So I feel like I should like get some rest and go find a cough drop or some NyQuil or something. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all tonight. Thanks to the people who tuned in. As always, just go to bitcheslovesports.com if you want to find my Twitter. Like if you stumbled upon this live stream and you want to follow me, I tweet a lot. I like to live tweet during games. I also talk about the Colorado Buffaloes. They're also on a bye week, so I don't know when I'm going live again. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the engagement. Much appreciated. And yeah, I'm gonna go get my dogs from outside and take my ass to bed. On that note, that's all I got. I'm Bitch 2, and I'm out.